I call the Patton Township Board of Supervisors meeting on Wednesday, November the 6th, 2024 at 5:30 to order. We welcome all, especially new Patton Township residents, to the Patton Township community, a place for all. As you are able, please rise and join the board in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Are there any announcements at this time?
No.
All right. Next on the agenda is additions to the posted agenda. Are there any additional items to be added to the posted agenda?
No.
All right. Next are public comments. Residents, taxpayers may address the board on issues of interest to the township. Comments related to a specific agenda item should be deferred until that point in the meeting. If you are attending on Zoom, please use the raised hand feature of the Zoom application and wait for the chair to indicate it is your opportunity to speak. If you are attending in person, please approach the podium and wait for the chair to indicate it is your opportunity to speak. Public comments are limited to 5 minutes per person. Are there any public comments at this time?
I don't see any.
All right. Next on the agenda is presentations and public hearing. First is the Veterans Day proclamation. And I guess
Would you like someone to read it?
You should read it.
I'm reading.
Our veteran should read it.
It is an honor to read the proclamation, being a veteran myself, and to all our veterans and our staff and our officers. It's the Patton Township Board of Supervisors proclamation, A Place for All, a proclamation celebrating Veterans Day. Whereas each year on November 11th, we pause to remember the men and women who throughout history served bravely and selflessly in American Armed Forces, preserving our strength and security as a nation. These individuals sacrificed a great deal for the cherished cause of freedom and democracy. And as veterans, they deserve and will always have the respect and appreciation of all our citizens. And whereas on Veterans Day, we publicly commemorate the honorary legacy and sacrifices of our veterans, Americans and the people of many nations live in freedom because of the contributions and sacrifices made by our men and women in uniform who served during times of peril and national crisis. And whereas the brave men and women of the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Coast Guard, and NASA demonstrate a resolute selflessness and courageous spirit that is unmatched. And whereas Veterans Day provides an opportunity for Patton Township to honor the service and sacrifice of all veterans and their families, now therefore be it resolved by Patton Township Board of Supervisors that on November the 11th, we honor all veterans and their families and offer Patton Township sincere recognition and appreciation of their immeasurable service. Proclaiming this 6th day of November 2024 by the Patton Township Board of Supervisors. And at this time, if anyone would like to say anything.
So moved.
And if you wanted to say anything before we take a motion,
Sorry.
that's fine with me.
I would just note that we have 4 veterans that work for the township, 3 police officers and 1 on our public works crew. And the township office will be closed Monday for Veterans Day.
Great. Thank you. Okay, then, can I get a motion to approve the Veterans Day proclamation recognizing and celebrating veterans on Veterans Day?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The proclamation passes, and thank you all. Next on the agenda is the Oakwood Center Tax Assessment Appeal Settlement. Amy, I think that's you.
Yes, so I'll take this, and then Betsy is online and can answer any questions that you might have. So in December of 2023, the owners of the Oakwood Center property, which is at 100 Oakwood Avenue, appealed their tax assessment. When the appeal was filed, the implied fair market value was a little more than $7.2 million for the property. The parties involved in the appeal were the county, the township, and the State College Area School District. In working through the process and looking at market conditions, the owner is proposing that the fair market value be set at $3.2 million with an assessed value of $592,000. And because we're a part of this appeal, the board has to is being asked to approve the settlement. I included a copy of the stipulation in the agenda, and again, I mentioned that Betsy's online if you have questions.
Okay, are there any questions at this time for Amy or our solicitor, Betsy Dupree? If not,
Yeah.
you have a question?
Yeah, I'm just confused, and I read the settlement, but just help me understand how we go from 7.2 down to 3.2 million.
Betsy, did you hear the question?
Yeah, I did. I mean, there are a couple factors in here. First of all, this unit got condoed out, so I'm not sure that, well, let me rephrase that and say that I think the original assessment was over-assessed because the units had been split out, and this unit probably got a higher number than it should have. The other factor that's out there is that there has been a sale and there is one pending, and so there's actual market figures for the value. So whether it happened through a process like this or through the sales, these properties would have undoubtedly been adjusted downward. It is an office building, so it's hard for me to really believe, knowing its location and its situation, that $7 million was ever a practical number. Part of the problem is that included in this is some of the shared parking with the restaurant in the front, but it also was cut off. It was given to the restaurant, and so I think in some of the separation of how those units got separated, the values got off. So I don't know if that explains it, but I think the answer here is that the $7 million probably was an over number, and if the assessor was here, I think that's what he would say.
Okay, Supervisor Bergudez, you have any other questions? Okay, Betsy, thank you. Any other questions for Betsy at this time? If not, can I get a motion to approve the Oakwood Center stipulation to settlement?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes to approve the Oakwood Center stipulation to the settlement. All right. Next on the agenda is the proposed 2025 Township Budget Presentation. Director of Finance and Administrator Larry Pager. And our Township Manager Amy Farkas will present.
I'm gonna let Larry kick this off, and then Tyler and I will bat cleanup, I guess.
All right, so I'm going to start with an overview of the budget that Amy and I are presenting, and then we're going to go through and have a presentation of the police part of the budget, and then the Public Works, EPZ, and Parks. Okay? So the timeline is today we're going to have the presentation and the work session. And November 13th, which is next Wednesday, we will have the tentative adoption of the budget. And December 18th, we'll have the public hearing and the final adoption of the budget and the CIP. We're going to start with some the accomplishments from 2024. So the 2024 projects and accomplishments are that we welcomed the K-9 graph to our police department. We completed improvements on Atherton Street to the at the entrance to the Patton Crossing. We started stormwater project along Meeks Lane. We completed the codification project. We completed conservation plans for the Haw Family Preserve and the Grays Woods Preserve. We installed new playground equipment in Oakwood Park. We completed spongy moss spraying, and we also completed roadway improvements on North Oak Lane. The breakdown of our revenue and expenditures versus budget, we had budgeted $15,499,000 in revenue, and we're projecting to do $12,899 in revenue, which gives us a shortfall in revenue of about $2.6 million. On the expenditure side, we budgeted for $16.3 million in expenditures. We're projected to only have $13.8 million in expenditures, which gives us a shortfall in expenditures of $2.5 million. And if you look at those two, it's about $85,000 shortfall from the budget. Providing services every day. Some of the things we did in 2024 is we replaced one of the patrol vehicles. Again, we welcomed Graf to our police department. We replaced one one-ton pickup truck, one one-man leaf truck, and a milling head. We paid out a significant amount of accrued compensated absences for retirements and other separations. And we did road projects. We overlaid North Oak Lane and microsurfaced Circleville Road. Our 2025 tax rates that we're proposing in this budget, we're proposing a 1 mil increase in real estate taxes. That will take us from 9.3 mils for real estate to 10.3. We also have 0.6 of a mil for the open space preservation debt. We have a 0.5% for an earned income tax, $52 for local services tax, and a 0.5% for real estate transfer tax. And those last three, the earned income tax, the local services tax, and the real estate transfer tax, are all at the maximum rate permitted. This is a graph that shows since 2008 our millage rate, which started at 7.2 and has increased, and like I said, for 2025 we're proposing at 10.9. This graph shows 3 lines. The bottom line, which is the blue line, this one here, that is our change in our real estate taxes. This starts in 2011 and comes through, so you can see the rate of our income tax increase in the years between it's between 2012 and 2024. We did not have an increase other than the 0.6 of a mil that was approved by referendum. The green line, which is this middle line, is inflation. So as you can see that even to date, our real estate tax rate is still significantly under inflation. The third line, the red line, that's the increase of COG, the percentage increase of COG from 2011 to today. So you can see it's slightly over a 90% increase over those times, compared to just under a 40% increase for inflation and just about a 25% increase in our real estate taxes. Our revenues are broken down into 6 million for real estate taxes, 350,000 for the tax for the open space debt, just under 3 million for earned income tax, just over 1 million for other taxes, intergovernmental payments, which are grants and such, are 1.7 million, and non-tax sources are 800,000, for total revenues being budgeted of 12,947,503. The budget for non-tax revenue, that was at $800,000 that I mentioned on the last slide. 145,000 are from assessments. That's the two assessments that we have, which is street lights and fire hydrants. License permits and franchise fees, which includes like Comcast franchise fees, etc., 293,000. Fines are 45,000. Interest is 10,000. Departmental earnings are 52,000. The Penn State fees in lieu of taxes are 53,000. Rental income is 50,000, and miscellaneous other miscellaneous items are 156 for the total of 800,000. This is a graph that shows the budgeted revenue by source. You can see that the real estate taxes are our big income generator at 46%. The next largest one is earned income tax at 23%. The grants and such are next at 13%. Budget expenditures are in total $13,395,667. They break down into general governmental and administrative services of 1.8 million, police services of 4.1 million, public works of just under 3 million, planning and zoning, parks and recreation, just under 2 million, other community services, 1.3 million, debt service of 788,000, and our debt service for open space of 245, and again that totals $13,395,667. The budget for wages and benefits, the COLA for non-uniform employees is in the budget at 3.2%. Last year it was 4.3%. In 2023 it was 6.3%, and in 2022 it was 4%. Also included in the budget is a 1.25% merit for the non-uniform employees, which they're eligible to receive on their anniversary dates. The police contract, there was a 4-year contract signed in 2022, and that included a 6% increase in 2023, a 5% increase in 2024, and a 4% increase in 2025 and 2026. So that 4% increase is included in this budget. Our health insurance has increased for 2025 14.8%. And of that, the employees contribute, the non-uniform employees contribute 12% of the total cost of the health insurance, and the uniform employees contribute 9%. This is the wages and benefits last year compared to this year, so we can see the effect that this has on our budget. As you can see, the total difference is $356,000. The majority of that is in the police, because the police have the highest compensated employees with a 4% increase. The total of the $356,000 difference, that would equal 0.6 of a mil, just over 0.6 of a mil. Okay. The next slide shows the differences between 2024 and 2025 for the COG. and that difference is $145,000. And you can see, actually, we talked about the COG budget and that they did a really good job of budgeting. However, they're using every little bit of their fund balance that they can. So next year, we would expect that the increase will be significantly higher, but that $145,000 equals 0.25 mils, or a quarter of a mil. Okay? Our budget, the graph that shows our expenditures by source, you can see that the police account for 31% of our budget. Public Works accounts for 22%, and COG accounts for 16%. That gives us down to the summary with our just under $13 million in revenues and just about $13.4 million in expenditures. We're expecting that there will be a decrease in fund balance of $448,000, which would leave us a year-end cash balance of just under 1.2 million, and that is about 8.89% of expenditures. In looking at this number, 8.89 is just above 1 month's expenditures, that at the end of December 31st, 2025, we would have 1 month's cash to get us through 1 month. We do not bill for taxes, real estate taxes, until the beginning of March. We do not get money in until the beginning of April. So we really need 3 months worth of expenditures there. But we are looking at ways to stretch out that 8.89% cash balance so that we can not raise the taxes more than necessary. One of the things that Amy and I did when we first did the budget is it was significantly higher than the $448,000 usage of fund balance. And we took the approach that I like to take, and that is to look at both sides of the equation, cut some expenses, and raise revenues so that we don't have one side or the other bearing too much of a threat. So that's what we did in this budget. This is the breakdown of the millage. Our general debt would go from 6.6 mils to 7.6. The remaining, the debt, the open space preservation, the library, parks, capital improvements, and fire would all remain the same. As I said, next week we do a tentative adoption if everything goes okay, and then we would advertise the budget for the public hearing. And with that, I will take any questions on my presentation.
Supervisor Abrams, do you have any questions?
Not a question,
Huh? You all right? Okay.
I think.
Any other board members have any? Supervisor Witt?
Yeah, just, I was going to ask you about the timeline of income, which you've already given us, but I wanted a little reassurance that there might have been some stuff I didn't quite catch. So the beginning of March is when the tax notices go out?
That's correct.
Right.
The first week of March is when we send out the real estate tax notices for the township.
Yeah.
And they have 60 days to pay at discount.
Gotcha, yeah. Right.
So they have until the end of April to pay at discount. Generally, we start getting them in then in the beginning of April.
Okay.
So the month of April is where we get the vast majority of our.
Yeah, I remember that. I thought it, for some reason I thought it was a little earlier. So then I'm wondering if that, I have the number in front of me, the percent that you mentioned, you said was essentially the expenses for 1 month. Okay.
Yes.
And that and the fund balance, and I couldn't flip the pages fast enough. So I just want reassurance that we're up. So March is actually 2 months in,
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
Correct, but we're not going to get the money in until April.
Oh, I know that, so
So it's
actually.
3 months.
It's 3 months in, okay, let's look at that.
That's correct.
And yet you're saying that the fund balance,
The fund
It's
balance
good for
will only
1
be
month.
for 1 month. That's
We,
correct.
we do get some revenue in, it's not a lot. We get some
Yeah.
earned income tax revenue in from the end of the fourth quarter, and we get a
Okay.
little bit of revenue in. But by and large, the problem that every municipality in Pennsylvania has, because all these tax deadlines are set by the state,
Sure.
is that we collect all of our money in the most of our money in the second quarter, and then we expend that money mostly in the third and the beginning of the fourth quarter, and then we have to live off of what's left from basically the middle of the fourth quarter until the beginning of the second quarter. So we've done some things, we had a conversation with the COG, because we get these COG bills every quarter, and we get a COG bill the first quarter of the year that we struggle to pay, frankly, because it's generally about $500,000. So we talked with the COG, and they're switching us to monthly billing, because it's easier for us to pay a smaller amount of money than a larger amount of money. And we're not the only ones who have trouble with the COG bill, there's other municipalities in the region as well. And then we've looked at other things too, to try to help, like the composting bill from the borough. We got a bill in January for $113,000. So we reached out and they said, we can bill you monthly now for that. So that's also helpful. So where we can, we've tried to stretch out the larger bills into smaller bills to help get us through. But this is why fund balance becomes a very important part of a municipality. And it also speaks to the state not giving us tools, unless we go home rule, to be able to raise those other taxes. So property taxes are a very regressive tax. And not having the ability to raise earned income tax, which could help us bring in additional revenue, is difficult. And the state has been talking about changes, but they have never made them. The tax code hasn't changed since the 1960s, and that's also a big piece of this problem. But that's why we're trying to do, and one of the things we'd like to do in 2025 with the board is sit down and really dig into our cash flow and our fund balance policy, because actually the Government Finance Officers Association is now recommending that you have 3 months on hand, which for us would be 17%. And so there are fund balance policies out there elsewhere that we could borrow from the state that, specify we're gonna raise taxes till we get to this certain level, and we're gonna, it calls everything out. And it also, I think, would do a good job of explaining to our residents, right? Because they're the ones who ultimately have to pay for this. So, and I like that Larry said, Larry and I sat and went through every section of the budget line by line to see where we could get, because we didn't want to have to raise taxes, and we didn't want to have to raise taxes as much as we are, but we're in the situation where we're at, so.
And also, if you take away the money that we received from ARPA, from the American Rescue Plan Act, and that was $1.6 million. If you take that away, we have used fund balance probably for the past 5 years.
Right.
we have what fund balance?
Used the fund balance.
Use the fund
Use the
balance.
fund
I just couldn't hear
balance.
that.
So the
Thank you.
fund balance has continued to decrease
Right, okay.
every year.
Yeah.
So we have brought it down from, being in the high 20s to being down to 8.
Percent.
And yes, the high 20% down to 8%. So we have probably gotten as much blood from that rock that we can.
Right, and the ARPA money, having it was great, except that it masked the need to do smaller increases in our tax rate, because we were using that money to pay operating expenses. So that 1.6 was a great infusion of cash, but honestly, that's the first time we've gotten an infusion of cash from the federal government since the 1980s, when they had government sharing money that they used to send out. So we're not gonna see that money again unless something drastically changes. So we have to now figure out how to move forward without, with supplementing that money that we lost.
So we're sort of caught between a rock and a hard place here. The philosophy of not wanting to maintain a high fund balance, but needing to maintain enough of a fund balance to get us through 3 months. So when we do this discussion about the budget and how it plays out over time, would it be okay or appropriate to have a discussion about home rule I know that's a lot of work to do, but.
Yeah.
It's always okay to have.
It's, yeah, and the township had that discussion when Tom Kurtz was the manager, a long time ago. I have all of that stuff in my office.
Yeah.
The city of Lancaster, Mayor Sirachi, I know from the league, they just approved last night their home rule. It was a 3-year process to get to that point where they had the vote with the voters, and it was like a 68% success rate. So I think that's a conversation. College Township is home rule so that they're second-class optional, so that's something we could look at. Ferguson and State College are completely home rule. The other thing it gives us more flexibility, and I think that's a very forward-thinking way to look.
Okay. And so that it has to go before the public as a referendum, is that what you're saying?
It goes to the public for a vote to create the study commission, and then it would go to the public again after. You have to have a committee. I can pull everything, because again, I have all of it upstairs. But you have to have a committee that does the study, and then the study makes the recommendation, and then it goes back to the voters to approve going to home rule.
Okay, so thank you for that. I know we don't need that information for this particular budget, but I also feel like I want to have that conversation, so thanks.
That's
great.
very forward-thinking. That's
Okay.
great.
Okay. Are you,
Oh, I'm done.
okay.
Thanks. Oh,
Any
Elliot,
other
yes.
board member, Elliot?
This does not include the capital improvement plan.
No, it does.
No, the capital improvement plan is built into this.
Oh, okay. I was going to suggest that for the capital improvement plan, that we consider not starting it until January, so that we can get some sense perhaps of what changes may be coming from the federal government and to a lesser extent the state government, that in view of the way the election turned out, because nobody knows exactly what we're going to be getting out of that, and maybe we shouldn't decide to spend a certain amount until we have a better feeling for that. Now, maybe we won't know anything in January, but it'll still delay it a little bit.
So what we did when we looked at the projects that needed to go in the 2025 operating budget from the CIP, we sat down and looked at them and said, can we fund them a different way? For example, Tyler will talk about a police car that he wanted to replace in 2025. We just got money from the local share, which is gambling money from the state, to replace the roof on the municipal building, because we identified that last year. Michelle Marrow, our consulting engineer, said you need to keep applying every year. So we're going to apply. Tyler needs a police car. We're going to apply to hopefully get funding in this next cycle. So we're trying to do basically what you're saying, Elliot. We put in the operating budget, we put those projects in, and then we're trying to identify other sources of revenue, grant funding, other things we can do. And then if we need to, if we get to a point where we say, okay, we're going to pave Christopher Lane, but we don't really feel like we have that $80,000 in the budget, we can punt. We can defer that if we have to. So we're doing that a little bit now. We just set the plan because we're a calendar year budget cycle. We set the plan at the same time that we set the operating budget, so everything's in there. And then if we don't have to do it, we can just defer it for another year.
Another thought on the same topic. Should we be asking our residents to look at the CIP to see if they have any suggestions for us?
So I would say two things on that. Number one, our boards and commissions are involved to a certain extent, especially the RAC, in setting what projects they're going to do for the next year. So they're obviously representing their residents. But also, we put everything out online. Everything's on our website. We do put out notifications to try to get feedback from residents. We try to be as transparent as we possibly can. So we are looking at ways, but we can look at additional ways to get additional feedback. I think that's a good comment.
And if I can add, the majority of the projects in the CIP are already covered, or we're preparing to cover them by grants and such. So the increase isn't coming because of CIP projects as much as it's coming because of the loss of the ARPA money to cover operations. So the comment that I made to Amy when I sat down and talked about it is, we have to look, if we want to avoid this type of 1 mil increase, we'd have to look at really cutting services. We have to look at cutting police services, meaning police officers, laying off police officers. We'd have to look at cutting services in the public works, because these increases are coming out of operations. They're not really coming too much out of the CIP projects, because we went through and covered the CIP projects with other funding. So I just wanted to make, to let everybody know that it's an operational
Budget.
budget, yeah.
Any other questions? No. Okay. Any other questions on this side? Amy, thank you. Chief, did you need to say anything before we
Yeah,
move on?
Chief's gonna give, we're gonna present now the individual department budgets.
Oh, okay, go.
So you can know what we're doing, so we'll let the chief go first.
Okay, hold on, let me
So I'll give Larry a second to queue up my,
get to the point where I can share the police. Oh, I don't want that one.
yeah, it's that bottom middle.
Huh?
Bottom middle, yep.
Yeah, I don't really want that one.
Pick a different one.
Well, I really don't want that one, because that's gonna be Zoom, and it never works Zoom.
Oh,
You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
And I had put it into,
doesn't advance.
okay.
Okay. All right, so beginning last year, Amy had asked us to kind of individually talk a little bit about some of the accomplishments and things like that, and some of the budget issues or budget items, larger budget items for each department. So just real quickly, just to remind everybody, our agency, obviously the police department is responsible for public safety and law enforcement for the township. We currently have a force of 20 sworn personnel. It's my position, 3 full-time detectives, 3 patrol sergeants, and 13 patrol officers. Our 1 patrol officer is assigned to crime prevention and community relations, and also serves as a part-time school resource officer for the 3 public schools that we have located in Patton Township. Also in the police department, we have 2 civilian employees that deal a lot with our records and our records management system. And we also have 3 part-time employees who technically fall under the police department. 2 of those are our school crossing guards, and we have 1 part-time employee who is assigned to ordinance enforcement in the township. I always like to include our mission statement. Just the Patton Township Police Department, in partnership with our community, provides impartial, ethical, and professional law enforcement service and protection. And we strive to maintain the trust and confidence of our citizens while working to improve the quality of life. And I'm not going to go over all of our values, but I just wanted to list them there as well. Getting into some of the accomplishments in 2024, Larry kind of stole my thunder a little bit, but he didn't have a cute photo of
No, I did not
graph.
put a photograph. I could have, but I didn't.
So,
I let that be known.
So we, back in January of 2024, we did purchase a canine. The biggest expense that we had in the township was adding a vehicle to our fleet and upfitting that vehicle specifically for the canine. So there's some special equipment that has to be in the car for the dog to make sure that the temperature stays the right temperature for him, and some different types of doors and cages that so he's comfortable as he's out on patrol. So that was about $71,000. The purchase of Graf and his training, and then the training also for his canine handler, Mitch Snyder, was $13,500. However, that was picked up by the Center County District Attorney's Office. We used drug forfeiture funds to pay for the actual purchase of Graf and for the training. The next big project we did in 2024 was replacing our firearms for our patrol officers. So we replaced all of our department-owned handguns. Those are on a 10-year cycle. So we'll be looking to do that again in 2034. We found that at that point, they start to kind of nickel and dime us. Some of the parts inside need to be replaced. So it's more efficient to change those out after about 10 years. We do have 2 train department armorers who work on our guns and make sure that they, kind of like a mechanic for a vehicle, they are the mechanic for our firearms to make sure they're working properly. Part of that project also included replacing their holsters, the lights on the guns, and extra magazines. The total for that project was about $20,000. However, we only ended up paying about just over $13,000 after we received credit for selling our used guns back to the vendor that we purchased our new ones from. Big project was replacing our body-worn cameras and our in-car cameras. We did go out and look for grant money, and we'll talk about that here in just one second. And we were awarded a grant, but our technology was getting very old. In 2013, we started installing the in-car cameras, and then if you recall, back in about 2017, we started with our body-worn camera program. The body-worn cameras, they take a lot of abuse. They're out in the elements. Officers are standing out in the rain, directing traffic, and they have the body cameras on them. So they were starting to get to the point where we definitely needed to replace those. And then, like I said, the in-car camera technology was pretty old. So we did replace our old body-worn cameras with new Axon body-worn cameras. Each officer is assigned a body-worn camera, and then each marked car, including our K9 car, also has an in-car system. So the photo on the left is kind of sitting in the passenger seat, but you can see the camera mounted there just behind the rear view mirror. And then the photo on the right is the new body-worn cameras that our officers are wearing when they're out on patrol. So we spent in 2024 about $43,000. $14,000 of that was offset for hardware. That's from the grant that we received, federal grant for the hardware that we had purchased. We do have ongoing costs. We did spread this project. The total of the project was about $139,000. We spread that over a 5-year period, so we do have just under $24,000 budgeted in a CIP project for 2025 through 2028 to finish up the purchase of the hardware, also ongoing costs for the software and for storage and things like that. Just talked about the body-worn cameras, but getting into our capital improvement projects that we have, the major ones in the police department. Again, the body-worn cameras was a CIP that we put in a few years ago. Second one is our records management system. We've talked about this a few times. We're at the point, our current system is at the end of life. So we currently have a consultant working for us to help us find a new records management system. And we are very lucky because the State College Borough applied for and received a grant from PCCD for about $1.2 million for the replacement of our records management system, which should take care of just about the entire purchase. So we are still working with the consultant. In 2025, we have about $17,000 left paying the consultant to help us secure that. We're actually at the point where we're just getting ready to put an RFP out for the purchase of that system now. Hopefully actually in the next week or so.
Oh, right.
Amy kind of mentioned this already, but looking to replace one police car next year, one of our marked cars. And we are going to do that hopefully if we're able to secure some grant funding. If we're unable to find any grant funding, we're going to be able to push that purchase back a year if we need to. That's not a problem. We're very lucky. We have a great mechanic here at the township, and he does a fantastic job of keeping our fleet up and running. So if we did have to push that CIP project back a year, that's not a problem. However, we're hopeful that we'll find grant funding to be able to purchase the vehicle and all the upfitting equipment. Let's see here. Talked about the K9 program. Again, it's a CIP project that we had put in a couple years ago. Went into effect in 2024. But we do have ongoing costs for vet care, food for the dog, insurance for the dog, and overtime for the officer. The Central Booking Center, we've talked about this. That was put in also last year as a CIP for the shortfall from the booking center. There's been a few factors that have included their operating budget there. And as part of the contract that we have, being a member agency utilizing the booking center for arrests, We are responsible for any of the shortfall. They have a formula, and we use it about 20%. So our number comes out to, for 2025 in the CIP, we have $45,000 allotted for that. They just recently put out some information, and we're hoping that we're going to be maybe about $10,000 under that number after they see where they're at with revenue at the end of the year here. So we're hopefully not going to be on the hook for that much, but we have that allotted in the CIP project. And then lastly, a big one are radios, our portable radios that the officers wear on duty. They are at the end of life. We've had them for about 13 years. And so a couple of other agencies locally, we all bought them together back in about 2006, I believe it was. And a lot of the other agencies have already replaced them. So we're actually at the point now, I'm sorry, 2006, 2012. Yeah, math wasn't adding up there. So a couple of the other agencies have already replaced the ones that we have. We have Motorola radios right now. So we have received quotes from Motorola and Kenwood to look into replacing those. And again, we're going to hopefully look for some grant funding to offset that cost, which would be replacing the portable radios, the chargers, extra batteries, the holders, and the earpieces that the officers use. So again, hopeful that we'll be able to track down some grant funding that can offset or pay for the entire project, hopefully. So, and that is all that I have for the police department.
Okay, are there any questions for Chief at this time? Betsy?
The car, of course.
Yep.
You'll try and get an EV, or I know that an EV is not appropriate for all vehicles,
Right.
but will you try for that again?
We'll look into see what the options are. At the very least, we try to look into a hybrid option as well.
Yeah, that's fine.
We've struggled to get, we've actually tried to purchase a couple of hybrids, and then they never manufactured them.
Yeah.
We'll absolutely consider some kind of like a hybrid or electric vehicle.
Do I remember that the car we purchased last year, you put an order in and then it was never made? Was that what it was, or it just wasn't available?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, we actually ordered two. So actually, it would have been last year, it would have been 2 years ago when we did the K-9 program.
Okay.
We had ordered two hybrid vehicles, and in about, let's see, it was June or July, Ford reached out to us and said that they weren't going to fulfill our order.
I thought that,
So,
okay.
yeah.
Time flies, I thought,
Yep.
yeah, because I was going to then ask sort of the obvious question, but I didn't know what freedom you had to push up your request, even though you didn't need it for, another year, because I thought it was what's in the production chute or the production line, but it sounds like it's just a question, it's a matter of whether they're going to produce them at all.
Yeah, so we generally, we try to get approval in January from the board to make our purchase, because we know there is different production lines and things like that are going through. Yeah, very rarely are we finding any hybrid or EVs that are actually on lots waiting to be purchased.
Okay.
Sometimes there are gasoline options that, we can just run right over and say we want that vehicle and go take it to the upfitter. So, we certainly, if we are able to find a grant, a hybrid would be a fantastic choice for us. We'd be happy with that. So.
Yeah, sure. I know certainly safety is far more important than the EV, although in the big picture, the EV is very important. So I understand that. So I'll ask about it. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Chief at this time? Chief, thank you. Amy?
Okay, I'm going to do Public Works next. Okay, so the Public Works Department is responsible for both the short-term and the long-term maintenance of the township roads, our facilities and other assets, including our fleet. We have a Director of Public Works Operations who oversees the department. Our road crew provides the maintenance for the facilities and is under the direction of our road superintendent. Ken Soder, who's our Director of Public Works Operations, will be retiring December the 6th. We are going to spend some time, I'm going to spend some time looking at what the optimum staffing is for that department. Public Works Director positions are also pretty difficult to fill right now, so I may get a little creative in how we reclassify that position to get that filled. We currently have that funded from the midpoint of the year on next year to try to save some funds. So funding for our Public Works Department comes from three main sources. The first is our liquid fuels tax money. This is the tax that everybody pays in the state on gas purchases, and local governments get a percentage of that tax. So it's dedicated to supporting our roads in the township, and it's based on our road mileage. We currently have 62 miles of roads that we maintain. We receive $461,861 from this funding in 2025, and that is about a $10,000 decrease from 2024, and a lot of that is due to the growth of electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles, which aren't using as much gas, and the state has been working to address that as well, to come up with another funding source. Obviously, some of our funds come from the general fund, and then also we receive grant funding from the state to work on various projects. I mentioned the roof. We got money from the gaming fund to replace the roof on the municipal building next year. We've also applied for funding to replace a culvert on Douglas Drive and for a paving project on North Oak Lane. So in 2024, a couple of our accomplishments, we overlaid North Oak Lane from Galen Drive to Douglas Drive. We microsurfaced a section of Circleville Road. This was the first time we had microsurfaced in a couple of years, and we were very pleased with it. Microsurfacing is a great way to extend the life of pavement and then delay asphalt overlaying costs. So we're going to continue that next year. We repaired the shoulders in Timberton Estates. We purchased an electric vehicle, our first all-electric vehicle, and we also did spongy moth spraying. So in 2025, we're going to fund the following projects out of our liquid fuels tax account. We will continue and complete the overlay of North Oak Lane from Douglas Drive to Highland Drive at a cost of $219,350. We'll overlay Christopher Lane at a cost of $80,000. We'll continue the microsurfacing of Circleville Road from the Patton Wetland to the Circleville Park at a cost of $48,533. We'll replace the culvert on Douglas Drive. That's a $65,000 project, but we have applied for liquid fuels tax grant money from the county, Center County, and we should hear about that next month. We'll continue milling and patching and crack sealing. And then I always make this note about salt because I don't think folks understand how much salt costs us. We contract for 1,250 tons of salt through the state of Pennsylvania, the CoStarz contract. Our salt cost is $94.90 a ton. That's about a $5 a ton increase from 2024. So we'll pay for about half of our salt, $60,000 out of liquid fuels, and the rest will come out of the general fund. And our line painting, that was another thing I was unprepared for when I came to Patton Township. Our line painting is very expensive, and we'll pay for half of it out of liquid fuels, and that's $45,000. It's $90,000 total to paint all the lines in the township.
So why didn't you expect it when you?
Because there's so many more lines that need to be painted out here, because it's a much larger
Maybe
municipality.
because Harrison had roads.
Harris had roads.
They were just dirt roads.
They just had
Nobody
little,
could paint those.
little tiny roads.
I hope they're listening.
I love that. Okay. So projects we're going to fund out of the general fund next year. So leaf and brush collection. And I will say we have 3 leaf trucks running right now because we have one that we should probably retire at some point. But Glenn and I were talking about how we really need to always have 3 leaf trucks because we are doing way, way better on leaf collection this year. And we pay the borough for the use of their compost facility. And that just increased this year. And it's $113,204 a year. We'll pay for half of the salt out of the general fund, that's $58,000. Contribution towards our road resurfacing program, half of the line painting, and then the salaries and benefits for our public works department. Additionally, we're also going to pay spongy moth spraying. We'll have to do the egg mass count here in the fall to see where the spongy moth have gone. I'm kind of hoping the population may have decreased greatly this year. We're going to replace the roof on the municipal building again with a grant that we received from the state. That's $102,500, and we'll get that done as soon as we can because the roof is at the end of its useful life. We're also working with Kimmel Beaugret to determine space needs for a public works department. That's an $18,000 project. That'll help us do some long-range planning. And lastly, and I think this one is the one that I think I'm most excited about, we're going to finally take care of some of the technology, sound, and lighting issues in this meeting room next year. So we're very excited about that. So with that, if you have any questions on the public works budget, I can certainly answer them.
Okay, are there any questions for Amy at this time? Seeing none.
Oh, Betsy has a question.
Betsy, I'm
That's
sorry.
right. I do have a question about the composting. Is that what's one called the Hallbaker site?
Yeah.
So the borough owns that even though it's in Patton Township?
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, just
Yep.
checking. Keep forgetting that. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, now we'll go to engineering, planning, and zoning. so the EPZ department oversees development plan reviews, provides engineering support, and manages construction contracts and oversees our open space program. So last year, you'll remember that when our former township engineer, Ms. Castrocini, left, we decided to hire a consulting engineer, Ms. Marrow. She has been phenomenal. She's here 30 hours a week. We bill out a significant portion of her time, which offsets her cost, but she has been wonderful in helping us to identify funding sources, to address issues that we're dealing with. So we're going to continue that relationship with her into the future. And then, as I mentioned before, these departments used to be, EPZ and Public Works used to be one department, and then they were split a couple of years ago. I'm going to look at the optimum staffing and I'm going to talk with staff as well, but I may recommend to the board that we merge those departments back into one again. But that's something we'll work on in the beginning of 2025. So funding for this department comes from three sources: the general fund, the dedicated open space millage, which is the money that can only be used for the open space program, both debt service and then also operating costs for the open space, and then grants. We use grants to take care of traffic signal, roadway improvement projects, and some of the open space work. So things we've done in 2024, we oversaw the contracts for the Patton Crossing roadway improvement project and the Atherton Street signal coordination project. We started work on the Meeks Lane stream bank stabilization project, which we had to do as part of our MS4 permit for the state. We reviewed 9 plans, and we started discussions on Monday night on short-term rental regulations. That's going to be a lively discussion, I feel. We continued work on the conservation plan for the Grays Woods Preserve and the Haw Tract, and we completed a forestry management plan for the Seward Tract. So 2025, we're going to fund the following out of the general fund and/or grants. The Atherton Street Signal Coordination Project, we have $175,000 left in that grant, so we're going to use that to make targeted upgrades to various intersections throughout the corridor. That includes some in College Township and also Harris Township. The MS4 project will complete the stream bank stabilization project on Meeks Lane. We also received $70,838 in state funding to complete upgrades to the pedestrian signals on the Colonnade. We had waited until Penn Highlands was complete to do that work, so we'll do that next year. And we have $20,000 in state funding to work on the stormwater system on Toft Trees Avenue. If you're familiar, there is $200,000, I'm sorry. If you're familiar, there is a trough for the stormwater, and it's kind of an issue. So we're going to look at replacing that and hopefully making that a little better. The open space program is actually pretty busy. So they have funds from the open space dedicated millage and also a Hamer Foundation grant, which will expire at the end of 25. So we're going to continue doing the invasive species work at the Haw Family Preserve. We're going to install a deer fence at the Haw Family Preserve, and work will begin on a recreation plan for our open space properties that will explore the best way to encourage our residents to use these properties. And when I say use, I mean so that they can have trails and things to walk, and they can understand how valuable that open space is and what their tax money is paying for. Because I think a lot of folks don't realize they can go out and enjoy these properties, that they're not just sitting there, that they're available to be used. So with that, I will answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, any questions? Supervisor Whitman?
Oh,
Then I'll go.
Okay. The engineer,
Yes,
Merrill, what's her first name?
Michelle.
Michelle, I just couldn't think of her first name, thank you. So she's 30 hours a week, that's not always on site?
She's on site 30 hours a week.
Oh, awesome,
Yep.
that's great.
Yep.
I remember having a discussion, I think with you, or maybe, I'm trying to remember who was here at the time of the transition, about the importance that some people have of needing access to an engineer.
Yep.
Yeah, gotcha, perfect. Okay, I like it. Thank you.
Yep.
She's great, for the record.
Okay. Supervisor Abrams?
I like the way you try to tell the people what projects have been done and what their tax dollars are getting, because some people just think we're spending money and we're not
Right.
getting anything for it.
Elliot, can you move your,
And so that's good.
can you move your
Elliot,
mic
speak
closer
up to your
you?
mic a little bit.
Oh, I was finished,
Oh,
but I'll say it again.
thank
Just in
you.
general, yeah. Could you sit back? That's
Just wanted to say, I think it's excellent and wonderful that you let all the residents know exactly what our money is being used for, so that people don't think we're just spending money and not getting anything for it. Because that can lead to people not wanting to spend that money.
Yes,
Thanks.
thank you.
Okay, any other questions from the board?
All right, last up, parks. Okay, so our parks are overseen by Susan Wheeler and the members of the Recreation Advisory Committee. Funding for our park improvements come from two sources. We have a .7 mils dedicated from our general millage, which will equal $407,678 in 2025. This millage was established in 1998 and has not been adjusted since its adoption, and a lot of things have changed since 1998, and also from the general fund. So park development is guided by our Patton Township Parks Plan. This plan will actually be updated in 2025 by Ms. Wheeler and the members of the RAC. So in 2024, we had a busy year in our parks. Burnell Road was completed. The Cricklewood Drive bicycle pedestrian engineering design is almost completed. You'll actually get a presentation on that next week from the consultant. The Oakwood Park play equipment was replaced. The Douglas Drive connector to the Valley Vista shared use path preliminary design was worked on, but we've hit pause on that pending the school project to see what they're doing. The Scotia Road connector shared use path right-of-way acquisition was ongoing, and that's almost done. And then next year we'll turn to the engineering portion of that. And then we did get another Tree Pennsylvania grant in the spring and fall and did some tree planting in our parks. So in 2025, we're going to fund the following projects out of our dedicated fund. We're going to start the Phase 2 design for the Grays Woods Park. This is also exciting because the Grays Woods Park and the Grays Woods Preserve share a boundary, and the boundary is very odd because it was laid out by when they were going to sell lots back there. So we're going to actually square off the boundary between the two parcels. The Scotia Road shared use path engineering design will begin, and we will replace the split rail fencing in Circleville Park, and that completes a 3-park split rail fencing project that we started last year. And then out of the general fund, we're going to replace the play equipment in Graysdale Park, and we're looking to install shade sails at Burnell Road on the lower piece of it so people can enjoy the park without being beaten by the sun. And that is it for parks, so I can answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions for Amy at this time? Seeing none? Thank you.
So if you have any changes you want to see for the budget, we can make those for your meeting next week. If you're okay with it as it is, we'll just have you tentatively adopt it next week, and then you'll formally adopt after a public hearing in December.
Okay. Amy would like to thank you, Larry, and Chief for this wonderful presentation to keep us on top of things. Thank you. Seeing no other questions, next on the agenda is public safety. There are no items. Public works, operations, there are no items. Engineering, planning, and zoning, there are no items. Administration, no items. Consent agenda, no items. Management report, no items. For our committee reports, I know our committee meetings are coming up next week. So if anybody has any questions about your committee meetings, we look forward to your report. Next on the agenda is the other business, and before we adjourn, I would just like to say to all veterans, thank you for your service. And next on the agenda is the adjournment. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you all. This meeting is now adjourned.